Hello and welcome to the Mastering the Matrix. That's our new name. So my name's Troy Colmer, and today I've got our very special guest back again, Louisa from Feel Good Astrology. And today we're actually going to be talking about astrology. Well, our last podcast we were just talking about our
Yeah.
life and how to become a digital nomad and all these things and all how good a life is. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
so I'd like to welcome Louisa. How are you going today?
I'm doing very well in spite of the fact that it's like 7 a.m.
Yeah.
And I'd much rather be in bed. But it's really great to be back, and thank you for inviting me back.
Oh yeah,
It's very
I
nice.
thoroughly. Yeah, that's a big word for me.
It's all right. I trip over words as well.
Yeah, yeah. I changed the word. I really enjoyed that last podcast that we did. Yeah, you've got such a bubbly personality,
Oh,
and
thank you very much.
yeah, and like real uh like magnetic, I think, or free flowing, or yeah, I don't know. It's just like yeah, it's little bit infectious.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. So I know that the listeners today are going to probably learn a few things with the astrology side. And we had um, our other resident guest on, Lucy, that did the human by design astrology, which is it's similar but not the same. So
No,
hers is
exactly.
more like a programmy one, where you put it into the program and then it
Yeah.
sort of spits out thing, and then you interpret the program. Where this
Hmm.
astrology is more to do, which is very good. I'm not saying one's good or bad. I was just
All
explaining that.
right. I'll take you to task on that.
Yeah, I was just explaining the two different types.
Hmm.
And this astrology is more with the planets and alignments and from when you're born. So Lewis is probably going to explain it a bit more now, but they're the main differences, I think.
Oh, bless you. All right. Well, where do you want me to start?
Well, you know, you know what I was thinking, right? With this
Go-
astrology.
Yeah.
Because I was listening to a podcast the other day, or it might have been a YouTube thing or something. Because I'm always listening to things all the time with frequencies and
Mm.
vibration and all that type of thing. And what's your thoughts that the astrology thing is your past, not the future?
Ooh. Well, that's an interesting question. Because
Like who you were, and that's not actually
yeah,
predicting who you what your future is, but what your past was. But so then
mm,
what you're doing then is bringing that into the future.
yeah, I like the distinction there. The way I tend to use astrology is, you know, I say I draw up a map. I don't. A computer does it for me, but
Yeah,
I know how to draw it up. So I know how to, like when I was learning, I had to do it longhand, with an actual pen and a compass and this, that, and the other. But it's a circular chart and it's kind of divided into 12 areas. And I plot where the planets are all the way around according to where they were at the exact like latitude and longitude at the time of your exact moment of birth. So it's all sort of astronomically calculated. But when I look at a chart, um, there's a few things that happen. Like, first of all, I look at it as an astrologer. And then the second thing is I tune into it as well. So there's a bit of the witch in me going on. But with a chart, I see it as a map of what's already happened. Because like if you imagine like when you're born, we take a snapshot. It's like you're looking up at the sky and mapping where everything was at the time, place, and date of your birth. And so it's like a map, but the planets can continue to move. So their positions aren't static, like time didn't stop still when you were born. I might have done for you. Like it seems important, doesn't it?
well, yeah.
Like the
I,
moment
I
of birth.
I like to think that I'm
But like,
important.
yeah, yeah, well, you are important. But like the planets carry on moving and they've got cycles. And all their cycles are different lengths, like their orbits. Um, and what I notice when I'm looking at somebody's chart is I notice when one of the moving planets, and we call these transits, like a transiting planet, like it's not stationary. When it passes over a point where you've got something in your chart that's really important, like it might be your sun or your moon, and there's these 4 angles which are like the north, south, east and west in a birth chart, and when anything significant goes over those points, it creates something in your life. And so because I know the approximate cycle length, I can look at the chart and say, oh, about 5 years ago, or 6 months ago, and sometimes I can say with kind of a really good accuracy, like a week ago, I can see that this was in this part of this chart of yours, and it would have been highlighting this energy. And so I can kind of, you can read the past by the chart. The other thing that I think is important is if you can decode the chart, if you can decode what's happened in the past, you can more than likely look at the future. So I might notice, like for instance, when I work with a client, I will point out all the sensitive times and I'll say, look, at this point, something quite big happened, and I'll be able to point to the flavor of what was going on, and sometimes like really talk about it at length if the client wants me to. But then I always ask them for feedback. I'm always saying, so can you sort of tell me what was going on? Because once they share, like I think of it as a co-creation. Once we are communicating and I'm learning their code of how trauma shows up, or how excitement shows up, or how a relationship shows up, then I can say, okay, well, the next time that's going to happen is this time. And so I can give them a list of dates when things are coming up. Now, that's not to say they're going to happen, but it gives people a chance to prepare. And I always think, like years ago, my first job, I was working as a rep on a campsite in France. And we would get these messages to say, watch out, there's a storm. All your tents are going to go, like there's a flood, there's like terrible winds. And, it was great because I remember like we didn't have any tent pegs, but we had a hurricane on the way. And I went through the cutlery drawer and I was stabbing people's tents down with forks and knives and things like that, and tying them to trees with, like bits of rope and stuff. And so being forewarned helped me to save a load of tents. But there's also some really great things that happen in the middle of a trauma or something. So for instance, with this storm came a lot of water, and, I knew that we were going to have flooding. So I dug a trench around all the tents. But like, if I knew this was a regular occurrence, and if I wanted to capitalize on the energy of the water coming in, I might dig a trench, but also soak it in a particular area. And I might think, okay, what grows really well in water? And think, okay, blueberries, and they sell for a really good price. So I might put some blueberries down at the bottom of the garden, dig in this trench around this tent so that when the water comes down, it all goes off in this direction. So, the way I see it is, like when I'm working with a client, if I can crack their code, if I can look at all the significant times in the past and then just clarify with them and sort of calibrate my understanding of how it showed up in their life, then I can look at what's coming up in the future. And, like I always say, if there's a flood of planetary energy coming into you that's got a particular theme, use it. Because if you don't use it, the planet, it's like the planetary energy will use you. So for instance, there's a disruptive planet called Uranus. And one of the things that I've learned through observation and chatting with my clients, and just through the kinds of ups and downs in my life, like Uranus has got a really slow orbit time. It takes 84 years to go around the whole circle, the whole zodiac. And when Uranus comes up, like, for instance, in world events, Uranus is associated with things like earthquakes and surprising weather and the internet. And it's got like a whole list of things that it's really associated with. I think of it as consciousness. And if you think of consciousness, consciousness is changing. And, before we have these great big upgrades in conscious energy, we often have a little bit of chaos, because it's the chaos that causes us to question what's going on. So wherever Uranus is like really prominent in your chart, it shows that you're either going on a bit of a quest, or you're open for it, or that you're, quite rebellious, like really up for a challenge. But when Uranus is coming into somebody's chart, I'll find out from the client, how adventurous they are. They might love Uranus to be in a particular place of the chart. They might really thrive on it. But for some who are very cautious, I might choose to say, look, this is a little bit tricky. What I would do is make sure you got your savings sorted out. And, I tailor my advice to what's likely to come up, but how I think my client's going to handle it. Some people eat that kind of stuff for breakfast, but like Uranus could really bring up some massive changes in your life. And if you're ready for it, it could be the thing that you're waiting for to springboard you. If you don't mind me sharing, I've already had a quick look at your chart, and Uranus is in a really strong place in your chart. And Pluto, within the next 3 years, you're going through a really big transition at the moment, Troy.
Oh,
in terms
I do feel like I'm transitioning.
Yeah, well, it's with all your belief systems, the way you want to live, the way you're likely to live. I suspect you're going to be moving, but not just yet. But like Pluto is lining up to the part of your chart to do with the home in quite a strong way. And Pluto Pluto gets things moving.
How long have I got Pluto there for?
Oh, Pluto's going to take quite a few years to go
right.
over.
So I've got a few years to get down together.
He's not quite there yet.
Oh.
But like you hear him like a whisper. It's almost like you hear this kind of it's not quite big enough, or can't quite express myself. And so there's like these little whispers going on in your head, and you start to build a picture. Like Pluto comes in slowly, like a feeling that something needs to change and something needs to awaken. And so it takes time. It's not something that you go, boom, let's do this. It takes time, and you catch the flavor of it. But where Uranus is right now, that's kind of leading the way for you. Uranus is coming in. He's right on this part of your chart to do with relationships, which is showing that right now you're coming into a time of needing a lot more freedom in your relationships. Now, I'm not talking about just you and your wife, because I've had a quick look at her chart as well. You've both got quite a need for freedom and honesty and truth. It's a real strong key to both of your charts. But like right now, you're interviewing loads of people online, which is a Uranus theme, about consciousness, another Uranus theme. You've got quite a lot of astrologers and people talking about astrology. Uranus is one of the rulers of astrology. But Uranus is also about codes and understanding patterns. It's like patterns of consciousness. So it's fascinating that you've just changed your name to, can't hear you. What's your new name? Manifesting
mastering mastering the matrix. Sorry.
Mastering the matrix.
I was mesmerized.
Mastering the matrix.
Mastering the matrix.
Patterns. Yeah. It's all about patterns and patterns of consciousness. And that's what's a really big thing for you right now.
Yeah.
Like I was like, ooh, he's got some big change coming up. And I suspect that what you're doing with mastering the matrix is the thing that's leading this change.
Yeah, right.
I've just had a quick look, I've not delved right into it.
Oh, well, as long as it was only quick.
I'm going to be having a very thorough look.
I always, because I do worry about that I manifest it in, I manifest in what's going to happen.
Well, we're always doing it. I mean, first of all, like the planets keep on moving and nobody gets out of jail free, like we all anyone that lives to be 30 will go through their first Saturn return, where Saturn comes all the way back around to where it was at the time, place and date of their birth. And if we're lucky, we get to do a second Saturn return when we're 58 or around that time. In fact, my husband's about to come into that time. And Saturn returns represent a time when we're reviewing our progress. And they're not easy. They're quite tricky. We start to get quite analytical. And loads of people go through this sort of big change around 29. They start to realize that maybe the responsibilities they've built for themselves, is too much. So we all go through these particular cycles at different stages. But then there are also these unique cycles that are going on because of our actual birth chart. And so we've always got a combination of both of them going on. So we can't avoid change. I mean, some people might be resistant to it, but what I've noticed is where we're resistant, we bring in a whole heap of extra problems for ourselves.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, no, I'm not resisting at all. It's funny you're saying about moving because Kerry and I, my daughter Sarah's moved up to Brisbane, and so
Yep.
and I've been toying with the idea for a while to move to Queensland.
Yep.
But I just don't know about the heat because it's a bit hotter up there. But yeah, it's like it's well on the cards.
I really wouldn't be surprised to hear that you like move to the other side of a country, or actually move to another country altogether, or another culture, or I mean,
If it
what
was
you're
up to
going through right
me,
now is big.
yeah. If it was up to me, if it was just me by myself, I would have already moved. I'd be in Bali, or I'd be some other, even Mexico. I don't know. There's so many places I'd like to go to. But yeah, if it was just me, but I've got family and things, so I sort of, yeah. But if it was by myself, that's what I'd be doing for sure.
Yeah.
I'd be in a different country.
I mean, that's that's the other thing that I mean, I work with a lot because I live in Portugal, and because of Carl and his job, he helps people move to Portugal. So
Yeah,
like we work with a lot of Americans and Brits and Aussies, and also South Africans and things like that. There's loads of people moving all the time, and so I kind of sub in with him a little bit on his show and help people. But quite a few of these people have become my clients, and so what I'm looking at, is not just somebody's chart. I'd be looking at your wife's chart as well.
yeah.
Not, linking her to some of these other people moving, but like in relation to you, it's like, if you're
Let's
talking
hope
about
not.
if you're talking about a bonded couple,
Yeah,
you'll see the change happen in both of their charts at the same time.
yeah,
And that does happen. Like I've been working with a couple very recently, and one really wants to move and one really doesn't.
yeah.
And you can see it. And it didn't take long for me to confirm it. And then, the sort of plans have fallen apart. I think, before a move, it's good to be able to see it in the charts. And there's always one partner who's more dominant than the other. And they're the ones that lead all the change. And so it's really important to be able to see what's going on.
It's a crazy, this astrology thing. So I didn't really give much stead to it before, but the more I think about this program that we're in, and like even now I'm thinking I don't even know if there are planets. I don't know whether we're just told.
Yeah, no, I agree. I
don't know whether we're just told there's planets and there's actual not planets, but the actual program that we're in has the program that you're talking about, so that like if you're I was just talking to P about this exact same thing. And so if you're in a game, like the game's got all the programs, like you've got to get through all the stages.
Yep.
And so
it's got the rules.
Pardon?
It's got rules, hasn't it? And
Yeah.
boundary.
Like but then there's hacks, but there's always hacks so you can get around stuff. So I'm all about the hacks, But so as you've been talking and saying all those things, I'm thinking, what about if that was like, so we are in a program, I believe. So the program is the game. So the game, that is they are programmed in to the program, each of those stages, so that just like when you go through the game, you're going to go through stage 1, 2, and 3 or whatever, and you're going to come up against obstacles.
Yeah.
I say you know they're coming because you can see them as you're going through the game. You can see them there, so you think, oh, I've got to jump that, or go around here, or move there, or I've got to get a certain weapon or something, depending on what game you're playing. So, but you can see where you're going, but so it's sort of coming up in the stage. Yeah. So, what do you think about that? Do you think it could be?
I totally agree with that. Like there are repeating cycles in astrology, and when they come up, we get a chance to close down on something. Like say, there's a repeating problem, or a repeating thought, or a repeating self-sabotage, or just that you have this habit of buggering off and going and living in another country at this particular time. So there are like patterns that repeat again and again and again. I think when we correct them, or like using your game analogy, when we get through that particular level, then that repeating cycle, the next time it repeats, it's not about the problem of it, but it's more about the opportunity of it.
Whatever it is. That's
Yeah. And I've worked with quite a few so-called awakened people. So people who do free themselves of the matrix in their mind, so people whose minds have been completely blown apart. They've had these awakening experiences and their reality is never the same again. With those people, I've used I've used the time of their awakening to represent a new birth chart. It's like they outgrow the circumstances of their birth.
yeah,
Like outgrow their astrology. That said, you can still use it. Like I think the things that play out in your astrology, you can use them to your advantage. So, like for instance, I could draw up a birth chart of when this computer that I'm recording this on, or like that I'm connecting with you, like I could create a birth chart for this computer. But that's not to say this computer is going to marry somebody or anything like that. It doesn't have any kind of human consciousness, but everything has a birth chart, like from the moment it was born. But there would have been people born at the same time as this computer was made. There might have been a dog down the road that was born, a cat. I tend to think that cats are more superior to dogs. Not everyone agrees with me there, but I think the consciousness mixed with the astrology represents how it's experienced. So, for instance, I've just recently started working with a lot younger people. Like at the moment, younger people seem to be coming to me a lot more, and similar things that I see in the chart of a younger person, I know that they're unlikely to have mastered that energy properly as somebody in their 50s or 60s. And so I tailor my advice to represent the fact that they're probably on a different level to somebody, that's a bit older. And that's not to sell them short, but, most people mess up. We make mistakes. And hopefully by the time we're in our 50s and 60s, we're elders, we're respectable. We've got some skills on, we're not a white belt.
I'm not sure if anyone's put respectable in front of my name, but anyway.
So I think the way I see it is like I can't just read I can read a birth chart without the client, but I much prefer to work in collaboration with the client because it's important to assess their level of consciousness, and I'm not a judge of consciousness. I'm not like, oh look, they're really well evolved and that person's really shit. But the things that they talk about and the things that, the way they're handling life and approaching life, that will, I don't know if that's helped. But I do notice that you can kind of go beyond the patterns. You may have so much experience or just had your mind blown so that the patterns that are repeating in your chart can be played with, rather than experienced as some kind of happening. I guess it's the difference between, is life happening to you, or are you kind of at the cause of your life or not? Which is a real sort of principle of the law of attraction, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are you working at cause? Are you fully responsible? You don't really find that many 20-year-olds really fully responsible for things because they feel like life is happening to them.
Well, it's hard because Per and I just had the exact same conversation. Funny enough, what the problem is that it's bashed out of us, So from school, where stop daydreaming, stop do this, don't do that, don't do this, sit down, be quiet, blah blah blah, and then the parents goes, actually, age not your shoe size, all these things.
I haven't heard that for years.
Yeah, and then so it's all to get you ready to be a taxpayer, so you can be a drone. And I think the consciousness of the planet is moving. I was speaking to the last Dr. Irena that I just spoke to on the podcast before. She was saying that we're moving out of one of the things to Pisces, I think. a whole new realm. And so, and then I've heard other podcasts saying about how we're moving from the third dimension to the fourth dimension. And so I think there's a lot of change. And I think apparently the Dr. Uranus, she was saying that if you're born after 2000, that you're already born into the Pisces era. So that's why they're on a different wavelength than all of us people. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I know there is something going on, because there's just such a big, whether it's because of the internet, I don't know, but there's just seems to be so much energy flowing with the people talking about it, with frequencies and alignment, and like even just talking about relationship alignment with your energy alignment, with disease, that you're out of alignment with your body, so that's why you get disease. And yes, I don't know. I don't know whether I know there's something happening.
It's it's really easy. Sorry, interesting what you're mentioning. How people are saying we're moving out of this phase and into this phase, and yeah, I mean, I would agree that we are changing and we're always changing. I do also think, though, that if we want to move from like third to fifth, or like third to ninth, there's nothing to stop us from doing that. I really do believe that if we believe that we can do something, we really can.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that I recognized with these patterns, if we believe more in the patterns than we do in the power of our possibility, then we'll never, we'll always stay in our patterns, but I've met, like, for instance, I interviewed somebody who's a walk-in. So
what's that mean?
So this guy, who I interviewed, he says, have you ever seen the film? Oh God, what's it called? I can't remember the name. With
Funny
Kevin
how everything's
Spacey.
in the movies.
Oh yeah, well, that's not an accident, is it?
No, it's not. Yeah.
There's a bit of programming there.
Yeah.
So this guy says he's not the original spirit inhabiting the body that he is inhabiting. So there was a guy and he was unhappy with himself and he was a bit fat, and he decided to have some kind of gastric band put in, and it went slightly wrong. And apparently that was part of the design, that it would go slightly wrong. And when this person was in the middle of his operation, there would be a swap, like this one spirit would come out and this new spirit goes in. So there's quite a few people around the world who talk about being a walk-in, who are new spirits come to take over the body, a bit like body snatchers. I mean, that sounds really gruesome, but this is like a pre-arrangement. And then I speak to people who feel like they've had an upgrade. I know a couple of people who almost feel like after a particular thing happens that they are different, like there is something that goes on to them. It's like they hack their code. I don't know if they're consciously doing it, but a change occurs at a sort of metaphysical programming level. And like I said, there are people that awaken. We're going through these big changes, and I do think that the more changes that we're observing around us, the more likely they are to happen, because the observance of it brings it about more. I mean, it's a bit like the double slit experiments, which I probably can't explain very well, but in terms of metaphysics, there were experiments done to observe what happens with particles. And basically, because I can't remember how to explain it properly, but when these particles are observed, they behave differently to when they're not being observed. It's a bit like how the law of attraction works. If you're observing the patterns and observing your intention and noticing things, magic occurs.
Yeah.
You're getting in the flow of the resonance.
Yeah, that's the power of intention. There's a book called The Power of Intention, and they get a plant, and then they put um, like a meter on it, and then they go to do things to the plant, and then the plant does a reaction through the meter. Yeah, sort of a bit weird.
I read one of those books from the 70s, like from one of the they used a plant as a lie detector in a murder case. So there's this murder in a factory in the 70s, I think, in America. And there was a bit like, well, like your plant, or it might have been, I think it was a peace lily, because they're very sensitive to water. So this, like this one here. And they're really, really sensitive, and it observed the murder. And so they connected it up with notes. And they walked everyone from the factory through the room where the murder took place. And the plant was observing. And the plant was connected up to a lie detector. And all of a sudden, the plant went crazy. It was like, whoosh. And that's how they kind of broke that case.
Yeah, wow. So that's real. Was that,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
not a
totally real.
that's not
No, it's
fiction.
not.
Oh
No,
wow.
it's not.
Yeah, because that's what they did with the Power of Intention
I
book.
think it's called The Secret Life of Plants.
Oh right. Yeah, I've heard
Yeah,
of it.
that's where I read about that. You might have heard of it in in another book.
Yeah. Yeah, because what they did, they got the match, and then they went to go to burn the plant. The plant whoop, started
Oh
freaking out.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I was thinking,
And
oh, the plant's real.
yeah, and if you go to burn the plant, but you're not actually going to plant it, if you're not going to actually do it, and you're trying to trick the plant can read your mind. So it only reacts if you actually are going to burn it, and it feels your intention. But if you're saying, I'm going to burn you, and you're not going to burn it, the plant doesn't react. It knows.
Yeah, it's
Way smarter than us.
it's a it makes you, because you think about ripping the carrot out and just munching into it.
Yeah.
You're thinking, oh, who knows? Anyway, but we got to eat.
Yeah.
So we got off topic a bit from our astrology.
That's fine. That's
Yeah.
cool.
So the with the planets,
Yeah.
so you have, it relates to all the planets. Like, what about the new ones that they get? How does that come
Well, I
into it?
mean, that's the exciting thing. I've got so much to say about all of this. Because I don't necessarily believe in the empirical truth of the planets, because I don't actually believe anything that I see these days. Like, what I mean, the stuff that I see with my eyes, yeah, I think, okay, this is part of my reality. It looks like my reality, but I know under a metaphysical gaze, none of it's real. None of this exists. So I'd be kind of foolish to believe that the planets actually exist. But one thing I do realize is everyone in this reality that I'm sharing with right now, they all seem to accept that there are these planets, and they all, like, for instance, I don't really believe in the zodiac signs. Like, you're a Sagittarius, I'm a Sagittarius.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily believe in those. I think that's the weakest part of the astrology. So some people decided to create a band around the earth as we're looking at it, and this band goes out, and we project it out, and we call it the zodiac. And it's based on constellations. So look, there's the constellation of Scorpio. So
Yeah.
when the sun's moving through this part of the band, it's in the sign of Scorpio. Well, that doesn't really fit, because all of the constellations are different sizes. Some of them are massive and some of them are tiny. And yet in astrology, they've arbitrarily decided that Scorpio is 30 degrees. All 12 signs are 30 degrees to make
Yeah,
up
so
your
that
full
doesn't make sense, does it?
bullshit. But but now here's the thing, is like so many people have come together and believed the whole thing. So it's kind of like they've believed into place. If enough people believe in something, it kind of becomes real. And so, yes, I do look at the star signs, but actually what fascinates me more is the actual position of the planets. So I love looking at the sacred geometry and the patterns between the planets, based on the astronomical observance of where they are. So I noticed that when they're in particular aspects, like angular aspects from each other, that certain things happen. And when certain, like when a transiting, like a moving planet moves into alignment with one of yours, there's this kind of just beautiful patterns that emerge. Now, you were talking about what happens with these extra planets. You know, scientists are discovering new stuff all the time. Well, when Uranus was discovered, like all of the planets, as we notice them or observe them, even if they are made up, once humanity seems to notice something, there is a change in consciousness. So Uranus is known for creating waves, and it's very much known as a vibrational planet. And when it arrived, it coincided with scientific updates and things like that. So our knowledge of science, our knowledge of electricity and things like that, it upgrades every time there's this new planet that arrives. Now, one of the things I like doing is adding in asteroids. Now, not every astrologer does that. And there's no real kind of, if you try to get the scientific basis of it, you're not going to get it. But there are over 10,000 named asteroids. I think if I looked, there's probably an asteroid Troy. There's definitely an asteroid Louisa. There's an asteroid Talent, an asteroid House, an asteroid Amour for love. There's loads of asteroids, and they've just been named, you know, like how people can buy a star, you know, a star appears and all of a sudden somebody like says, okay, I'm going to give you $50 and I'm going to name that star, and forever, you know, that star is known as this. So there's like loads of stars or asteroids that have been named. And I will chart, like, you know, when someone's talking to me about their life, and, you know, if they've got, like, I was working with somebody yesterday who's setting up a charitable trust, and they've got 4 different names for their potential cafe. So I looked for asteroids to represent the vibration of the names of their cafes, and I put it in the chart to see which one was well placed, which one had more. And it's really bizarre, like loads of weird stuff happens when I put in asteroids. It's uncanny. So for instance, trying to think of a good example. I might have to come back to this because I've just got so many different examples of things that happen. But oh yeah, so someone was talking to me and having a bit of a problem, and the words they were using in their request to me, I look at the words and I think, okay, let's see if there's an asteroid with that word, like grief, or another one like block. You know, when people are talking about blockages, there's an asteroid block, and I'll put it in if it seems really relevant. Or I might use records for you, you know, because, you know, you're doing lots of recordings at the moment. And so I put in block, and when I put it into her chart, it linked up with another planet, and in quite a sort of unusual way. And I said, oh my God, this really reminds me of the film Rise of the Guardians. Now, you know, it's like the imagery of the name of the asteroid and the astrology of it just reminded me of this film. And I started to talk about it, and she got back to me. She said, that's so weird, because the blockage that I was talking about was part of a community thing that she's involved in, and they described the problem as being a problem of guardianship. So I'm talking about a film called Rise of the Guardians, and that is what they've named their problem. It's like, I think when you're using asteroids, and it might be because I'm a bit psychic, but I think everyone is, we're all intuitive, but when you're using asteroids, freaky stuff happens.
It's weird, isn't
but
it?
I just think when you're ready for the extra bit of consciousness, or ready for something new to come up, like when someone's got something going on, I will look for the asteroid that's related to that name, and it's always in a very prominent place in somebody's chart. Like the names we give our children, if I was to look in your birth chart and put in the names of your children, they would most likely be very close to your sun or your angles. and the time when they were born, the names are kind of rising. It's fascinating. I once had this woman client who went to, because here's the thing, if there isn't an asteroid with the exact number, like name, sometimes I play around with numbers. So for instance, somebody was seeing the number 111 a lot and was a bit curious about it, like master numbers and things like that. So each of these asteroids has a numerical reference number. So sometimes I might put in the reference number to get some information. And there's always a message there. It's like, and I think this is a bit like cracking the code. It's like looking behind, like everything has a vibration, a color, a shape, a sound, a taste, a touch, whatever. And often things have these like numerical tags. And I'm just kind of playing around with stuff. I'm looking at something that someone's talking to me about, getting an asteroid to represent it and seeing where it fits into their program. And you can look at charts in hundreds of, like you can look at a birth chart in infinite ways because you'll never run out of asteroids. Anyway,
Yeah, that's the big thing though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's freaky, like being able to do that.
It's a yeah, that's the only thing I think of is that it comes to a lot down to interpretation though, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so you've got to intuit it in. But maybe while you're saying that, you're talking about that lady and the movie.
Guardians.
Yeah, so because like manifesting, right? How you're manifesting whether you know it or you don't know it.
Yeah.
So you put something out for it to come in, something into the future to come into the now.
Yeah.
And then that program's been given to you so that you get to give it to that lady at that time, that exact same thing. Like it's when trying to get your head around how the whole thing works. Because I just keep going back to, my story with the living in how my mate's house was my birth father's house,
Yeah.
Like that's just not possible. Like it's not mathematically possible that could happen,
But
but it did. Like the exact house, like not the one next door, not the one down the road, not the one, not like that house. Like how can you meet somebody and then, but then you got to look, then you go all the way back to think, well, how did I actually meet him? Then you go back, like all the things that line up. That's why I think that the astrology thing, but it's still playful, I suppose. But it does give you the obstacles and things that are going to be put, maybe not obstacles, but they could be the hacks as well that are going to be into the future to come towards you. But so at least you get to know what's coming, I suppose.
Yeah, like with adding in asteroids and different things that we observe in space, it just creates a different perspective to look at the chart from, which I think opens up my natural intuition much further. But it might not be that. It might just be that like life is based on numbers and codes. And like we're not less, like I know people who see energy flows and they see like strings of energy from people connecting. You know how people like sometimes you might feel really tired in the company of some people. And then there'll be somebody that's observing and can see that person's an energy vampire. They're sucking energy from you. Like we see what's just here, like our flesh and blood and whatnot. But there are people who see the energy flows between people, and there might be like these tags in us. Like there might be a tag, like an energetic tag between you and your birth father and that house and a gazillion other places, a bit like being on a spider's web. And every now and again, a little breeze wobbles a particular part of the spider's web, and all of a sudden that energy just starts to vibrate, and then all of a sudden you meet your dad. It's like there are these invisible strings almost.
Yeah. And then it makes it hard to think, then you start to think, well, like is that is that all that already happened? Like is that
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
all that's already happened, and I'm just sort of like
yeah.
moving through something that's already been. Like it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the more you
I
think about it, the more
absolutely
it screws around in your mind.
yeah. Well, yesterday I just spent this. Well, oh crikey, we could get really metaphysical, couldn't we? But um, I just really doubt most aspects of reality these days. But then every now and again, these massive patterns show up, and I'm like, oh, hang on, there is something going on. And it's important to trust, even if everything around you sort of empirically know might be bullshit, and we can't really believe in anything. Every now and again, there are these patterns that awaken us, um, like for instance, when I get new clients, and I've got quite a few of them just recently, like new ones, they there will be a pattern. So if we were to contact, say, 10 astrologers and say, tell me about your latest clients, the chances are they've got a lot going on around the tail end of Capricorn and the beginning of Aquarius, say for 10 degrees out of a 360-degree circle, and or something going on between 15 degrees and 25 degrees in the sign of Taurus. The reason being, that's where Uranus is right now, and Pluto. And these are the planets that create the shitstorms for people. So I've just, the two people I was talking to yesterday, one of them has got the moon in the sign of Aquarius at 1 degree. And very soon Pluto's going to be coming to knock on her door and say, hang on a second, there's some emotional change that needs to be undertaken. I'm here, like the Grim Reaper, I'm knocking on your door. But let's not, think of him as Grim Reaper. He's there to show you transformation. But people who have the vibration of transformation coming in, they're the ones that are contacting astrologers. If you go back 10 years, they would nearly all be people who are Capricorns with their moon in Capricorn, their ascendant in Capricorn. And if you go back 15 years, a lot of Sagittarians would have been seeking advice when Pluto was really kind of messing things up for them, making things a bit exciting. So there's always a resonance as to like the new latest clients that are coming in, and they're the ones that are having their strings pulled, their astrological strings pulled. Now, on a monthly basis, I do a series of not predictions, but I mean, I do actually do a little bit of horoscope work. I don't like it particularly. I don't necessarily think there's anything to it, but get this. So each month I do a little forecast, a 5-minute forecast for every single sign of the zodiac. And I go to my YouTube, not very often, but I went to my YouTube and I set up a spreadsheet to see which signs are most popular. And Scorpio and Pisces, and not necessarily Sagittarius, but Scorpio and Pisces, and then what was the other one? It's mainly Scorpio and Pisces. And I was like, that's interesting. Why are they showing up? Because they're not the ones that are getting their astrological strings pulled. They're not, but there's more of the Scorpio and the Pisces people checking out my astrology. Now, that might not be the same for every astrologer, but if you look at my birth chart, I've got a lot of stuff, a lot of strings in my own chart around Scorpio and Pisces. Now, I then did a load of podcasts. So I did podcasts about Pluto through the houses, like there's 12 houses. I did the same with Uranus, the North Node, Chiron, Saturn. And so I've released like Pluto through the houses, like Pluto in the first, Pluto in the second, Pluto in the third, all the way around to 12. Did that for all the planets that I just mentioned. And I looked at which ones were being listened to the most. And they were nearly always the 8th house and the 12th house. Now, the 8th house is related to Scorpio. The 12th house is related to Pisces. So again, I was getting this really strong level of people, listening to my material that had a Scorpio and a Pisces theme in their charts. Like far and above, higher than all the other ones, like statistic, in a way that you can't ignore.
Wow. That's
Now that's
yeah,
because the people who are choosing to listen to me, they're choosing to listen to me because they're sensing something about my birth chart. So the stuff that's going on in their charts, or like, when they see me on YouTube, there's something about me that resonates with them. And how do they know? Like, they don't know my date of birth, they don't know my birth chart, but they're drawn to me. And it's because we have this shared resonance.
yeah. It's it's so amazing, isn't it? When the more that you start looking into all this stuff, yeah, it's it's just it really starts to play with your mind. What
Yeah.
could be possible?
Well, yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, like, now I know that I would be stupid to bother to record anything. I might as well just change my channel name and say, Feel Good Astrology for Scorpios and Pisces.
Yeah,
And then, like, it would be absolutely tailored for the people that are drawn to me. But I don't want to specialize like that. It doesn't feel quite right. There are other people that might want some help, but yeah, I might use more, like, when I'm doing exploratory stuff, I might use examples of people who are actually Scorpios or Pisces.
and
Because
what
there's
about
a
the clients that you attract? Would they be mainly them as well?
well, that's slightly different. I attract, like, in terms of like actual paying clients, they're the ones that are having their strings pulled more.
Oh, right.
But like, there's this form of astrology where you can compare charts. And so, like, if we use my hand to represent like different planets in your
Yeah,
chart, and this is the Kerry hand. It is Kerry, isn't it? Your wife?
Carrie, yeah, yep.
So, like, some people, like, when you put the charts on top of each other, there's not much of a match. But like in the charts of people who are married, there'll be 3 different areas, or there'll be areas where there's a match.
Oh, right.
So the people who come to me, there'll be a match of like their sun or their moon, or there's, like, I would say there's 4 or 5 really important areas in a chart. And if you think, there's 360 degrees in a circle, there are, a very small amount of areas in a chart that really resonate in, like in somebody's programming, and theirs will relate to mine. And, so A, they're having their astrological strings pulled, but B, there's also a pull between them and me. And you can always see it. But of course, you don't hear about that in the media. Like, media just takes the mick and says, oh, horoscopes, what a load of old hooey.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, look at it. I mean, here's another example. My husband, he's been married twice. I'm his current wife. He
Oh,
makes
geez, it gets around a bit.
he says I'm his current wife, not like, you are my wife, you're my current wife. I forgive him for that. But like, his first wife was born on the 19th of December. I'm born on the 20th of December. And our sons will be in pretty much the same place. They're just like half a degree difference. And that's kind of weird, that our birthdays are pretty much the same day. But so both of our sons are in the sign of Sagittarius. But then our moons, like, everyone's got a moon sign. The moon goes around the zodiac really, really fast. Both of our moons are in the sign of Pisces.
Yeah, wow.
And just a couple of degrees away from each other. So both our suns and our moons have pretty much the same space between them and are set in the same place. It's like if you had 2 hands on a clock, which you do, the 2 hands are kind of the same distance away from each other.
Yeah.
So pointing to the same times. The chances of that are pretty remote. But then our Venuses are both in the sign of Capricorn and both in the same place. So imagine that with 3 hands, and me and his ex-wife have got all 3 of those. But there's also Mercury. We've got something like 4 or 5 different connections that defy chance.
Yeah,
Like,
probability.
you know, I say to him, like when we meet people, if I hear he's meeting a woman like who's born, you know, between the 18th and 21st of December, I'm not going to let him go to that meeting on his own. I'm going to be really close by.
That's so
Yeah, it's
funny.
but then, you know, like, and this isn't astrology, but this is numbers, numerology. The date of her birth adds up to 8. So does mine. So does his. So we're all on an 8 vibrational path. There's so many different connections.
Yeah, so you wonder if anything is chance.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like it does bewilder you a bit, doesn't it? You think all these things that happened in your life, and you think, like, was that already all programmed?
Yeah. Well, before I met Carl, I had a boyfriend for 11 years who was a Capricorn. And when we split up, for the following 5 years, I managed to date another 4 guys born exactly the same week as him.
No way.
Just they kind of came in. Obviously, I didn't learn the lesson first time
No.
round. I needed to repeat it a
Did
few
Carl say
times.
Carl's is not in that week now?
No. He's
Yeah.
completely opposite
Oh, yeah,
pattern,
you
which is
made sure of that.
yeah, but it's that's that in and of itself is like it's the complete opposite pattern.
Yeah.
It's not just a different pattern. If you were to draw a circle, it dissects the circle. So all those guys were here and he's here, exactly the opposite. So it's a, you know, it's a rejection of the first pattern in a complete way.
Yeah, wow.
Like if you were to like fold the circle in half, they would kind of meet.
That'd line up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
But
so
there's all these patterns. And so that's what I love
oh,
about astrology is being able to observe these patterns and
I
think,
can see you can get
oh,
excited about it.
well, yeah. Well, if I sat down with charts and like your chart, your wife's chart, and your kids' charts, there would be areas that would all match up, and you'd think, wow, that's weird. And it's
Yeah.
just not. I mean, it's actually really normal. When you look at a mum's chart, especially to her first child, there are so many connections. And same to a dad, but less so, because obviously a mum is carrying that baby. Although, you know, apparently now men can do that. But but anyway, like when
Yeah.
you look at the, you know, a parent's chart and a child's chart, there is a really strong like number of like connections between the charts, you know, they
Yeah, wow.
match up. And that's because the first child creates the difference in their life. Becoming a parent alters your identity. And so
Yeah.
it, of course, it shows up.
Yeah, it is a whole different identity, isn't it? Once you
Yeah.
have a child.
It
Yeah. And
raises it, takes
I
you
sup-
up to a next level, doesn't it, of your
yeah.
computer game?
Yeah. And I suppose even like getting married and that changes
Yeah.
things as well, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, your first marriage normally has more of a relevance to your chart than subsequent marriages. I mean, mine actually does show up really hard in Carl's chart, thankfully.
Yeah.
But yeah, it shows up. I know a guy, right, who is a well, he's an interesting character anyway. But he met 2 women um and was dating both these women behind each other's back.
Oh no.
And yeah, it's not the kind of lifestyle I would endorse. He got both of them pregnant at the
Oh,
same time.
no way.
Yeah. And so he's got 2 boys born a week apart. Now, both the mums are Pisces and both the kids are Scorpios. I mean, that guy has got, and that's another Pisces Scorpio mix that I'm talking about. But this guy has got like 2 mums or birthing people in his life, and 2 sons are the same sign. I mean, that's really bizarre. You know, it's like he needed to have multiple patterns. Like he was.
How would
It's
he
just
deal
hard to
with that?
explain.
Did they find out? They'd have to find out.
Yeah, it's very messy, not
Yeah,
nice.
my God,
But
that wouldn't go down well.
every time I hear a story like that, or every time someone tells me a story, I'm like, I'm like a pattern whore.
Yeah.
I hear of a pattern, I'm like, oh, give me the
We
dates.
well, Louisa, We're going to talk all day again. So I
Yeah,
think we'll
yeah.
have to do another podcast to. It's so interesting, all this stuff with the astrology. I think we need to uh go a bit deeper into the astrology side of it because we get way late.
Can I show you some of the charts? Like maybe next time we get together,
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
if I've got the permission of you, your wife, and your kids, I won't reveal your dates of birth, but I could show how you all fit together.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Or if you tell me like one of the most stunning moments of your life, I will show you what was going on.
Oh,
And if not, I'll just bring some examples of my own.
all right. That sounds excellent. So, how would people get in contact with you if they want to find out this great work that you're doing?
um, they can go to feelgoodastrology.com.
Yeah.
That's kind of easy. Or just type in Louisa Tanner Munson at gmail.com. But feelgoodastrology.com is the easiest way.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because
Or go to my YouTube channel, Feel Good Astrology.
yeah, because there's so
Drop me-
many. Like it does feel a bit exciting. I've never really done it before, but other than with Lucy in, but then you think it does start to play in your mind. You think, oh.
Yeah.
And then you sort of want to know. I think that's where the thing is. I don't know whether it does make anything different in my life, but it's the FOMO, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, how could we put that FOMO to good use? Like, I mean, like, give me something you want to create and let's have a look at that chart.
Yeah. Say it again.
Like, like if you've got a question of something you or like a strong intention, this is what I am going to do.
Yeah.
The moment you have that intention, write down the time, the place, and the date of when you had that really strong intention, and we'll draw up the chart of it.
Oh, or what about how we just changed the name? I only just did that an hour ago.
Yeah, but to be fair, Troy,
That's
you
not it.
changed like how many times have you
Yeah,
changed
that's
your
true
name?
too. That's not a big thing, is it? I need something. We need,
Well, no, it is a big thing. I mean, I change a lot too, but
yeah.
so things that
Is that a Sagittarius thing?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, right. Kerry,
Your
I'm
your
just,
love of your love of patterns as well is your moon in Aquarius.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The moon in Aquarius is I've got a child with the moon in Aquarius, and you know, it's a fascination with information and codes and like the design of things. And yeah, it's a really unique way of seeing. But not that unique. I mean, it's like 1 in 12 chance, but
Oh, come on.
but
I was
with,
sort of,
but
I
with,
was,
but with your lovely like Sagittarius sun, you can compare those,
I
and then
was
you've got
actually quite liking
Scorpio.
it.
Well, okay, I will. I recorded something a couple of days ago on a show about your star sign. Now, I didn't name you, I didn't put your date of birth in, and I will clip it for you. So that's just like the first part of a reading for you.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
So
That
that was a
sounds good.
public one, but I will do more, which is sort of
Yeah.
individual and in
And
private.
how would people find it if they want to go and see what your public chart of me?
I tell you what, I'll clip it and I'll
Yeah.
send you a link.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
maybe you can put the link in the show
Yeah, I
notes.
will. I'll put it on the YouTube channel.
All
So,
right.
so then they can click over to it if they want to see me. See what
Yeah.
see what I look like. I'll, I'll be interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you dress like somebody with Scorpio rising.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Because like Scorpio rising, it's magnetic, it's like hypnotic. You're always in black. I've never seen you in any other colors.
Yeah. No, I just do the black because it's apparently that's the thing to for recording on video. I don't know.
It looks good.
And then I just thought, well,
Powerful, isn't it?
yeah, I've always and I just thought, well, 'cause, Craig's wife Donna, she said to me, does he ever wear any other shirt? Does he change his shirt? Or do you record him all? And he goes, nah, he just wears the same shirt. I go, yep. I just the
I
same.
think you've actually got a wardrobe with about 4 or 5 of those.
Yeah, I only just do this for the for the podcasting. I wear other shirts. Well, thanks very much, Louisa, and
Right.
thank you for your time, and thanks for coming on the podcast. Oh God, I totally enjoy it. You know, like doing these podcasts, I
Yeah.
can't believe people get paid to do this, to do podcasts. You know, like Joe Rogan, imagine getting paid $100 million to talk to
Yeah.
people.
I'm imagining it right now. That'd be great.
Oh, mate.
Wouldn't that be great?
No
What would you do
wonder
with that?
why, no wonder why those people are loving life, you know, because it's so, I don't know what it is. It's just so interesting to talking about topics, you know, like,
Yeah.
and it's especially when it's free flowing. Like I don't have any questions. I just let it flow, you know, and,
Yes.
like, it's just so exciting. I think, well, imagine
I
getting paid
agree.
$100 million to do this job. That now I would be on cloud nine, let me tell you.
Hang on one second. What is that you just said? I wonder what it would be like to earn $100 million per.
No, to be paid $100 million to do podcasting.
That's a good question to look at the astrology of.
Oh, really?
I
Oh,
wonder.
can you program it in for me?
Yeah. Um,
Can I,
I'll send it to you
Troy
later.
Colmer, the next Joe Rogan.
I wonder what it'd be like to earn. How much was it?
100 million. Yeah, we don't like small numbers.
It's not per episode, though, is it?
No.
Like,
That's all up. I think I don't know how
it'd be
he's.
a podcaster.
I don't know how his pay structure is. I just know that Spotify, going by the media, whether that's true or not, he got paid
Yeah.
100 million to put all his stuff onto Spotify.
Yeah. And he's got so much influence now that they're not ditching him, even though he's selling a narrative that they don't like.
Yeah, they don't like it. Yeah, but that's another topic
Anyway,
within itself. Well,
totally.
thank
All
you
right.
again.
Well, same
And if
time next week.
Yeah, and if you'd like to find out more about me, head over to troycolman.com. I've got my website over there and everything that I do, and yeah, just loving life and loving talking to people like Louisa, and raising the vibration of, you know, as many people as we can to realize that this life that we live in can be truly exciting. We don't have to go along with the narrative that we're sold. And yeah, thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next one.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on, and see you soon.